Love. Let me tell you what I know about love. I got a thing or two to tell you about it. Spoke about before. Um, so I come from a Middle Eastern culture background. Um, and with that, even though we immigrated to the United States in 1972, and here we are, fast forward, I'm in high school, 1984, 5, 6, 87. My first girlfriend, it was fine. You know, my parents let me have a girlfriend. It's what kids did. But something happened. And oh my God, did it change the course of my life and her life. Her mom, Lizette's mom, had a very thick Spanish accent. So we're dating for about a year and a half, and you know, we lived in Borough Park, Brooklyn then, and Lizette lived in Atlantic Avenue. But go figure, because that's where all the Arabic restaurants were, and that's where we would, you know, my dad would drive me, my mom, and my brother to go shopping on the weekends for, you know, pita bread and shawarma and bastirma and all these Arabic things. So that's where it was. Go figure. So it was a Saturday night. I think it was actually our 1 year anniversary, and I took Lizette out to dinner and had my dad's Ford Monarch, and oh boy, there's other stories with that. But we were done with dinner. We went to a Chinese restaurant, really nice one on Fifth Avenue. It was really a good time. I was really happy. My first 1 year anniversary with a girlfriend. Get to her house, pull up, you know, I'm going to go upstairs, you know, say goodnight. Her mom opens up the window and she goes, "Your father wants you home right away." I'm like, "What happened?" She goes, "I don't know, but he's very mad and he wants you home right now." I'm like, "Okay." But she said it in her, you know, Spanish accent, which I can't mimic. So I get home and I'm like, "Dad, what's wrong?" He goes, "Get over here." I'm like, "What? What did I do?" He goes, "Pick up that phone." And back then it was the kitchen phone, you know, that hung in the kitchen with that long cord because you stretched it walking all over the house with it while you talked. He goes, "Call Lizette right now." I said, "Okay." So I call Lizette, I dial the number. I'm like, "Hi, Lizette." She's like, "Hi, is everything all right?" With concern. Out of nowhere. I wouldn't imagine this for a million years. What came out of my father's mouth? "You break up with her right now." What? Dad? You heard me. You break up with her right now. You tell her it's over and you're never going to see her again. I'm 17. This is my girlfriend. We just had our 1 year anniversary. What? You know, this is all going on in my head, and I'm trying to understand what happened. So I'm like, "Lizette, I got to break up with you." And she goes, what do you mean, honey?" "Tell her." I said, "Tell her now." I said, "Dad, I'm telling her." He goes, "You're not being straight enough." Takes the phone from me, and he goes, "Lizette, dear." And I'm like, my dad's very diplomatic, but he's a hothead, Middle Eastern hothead. He goes, "You and Hani cannot see each other anymore. Have a good night." And he hangs up the phone. And I'm like, I go to grab the phone to call her back. Guess what my dad does? You'll never believe it. Takes the phone, rips it off the freaking wall, throws it in the garbage, and says, "You're done. Go to bed." My life was over at that moment. I didn't understand what happened. You know, when something happens to you and it's like, it's not real? I went to bed. Did I sleep? No. Did I cry all night? Yes. Did my heart pound out of my chest? Did I lose my breath and not be able to breathe? Yes. No idea what happened. Next morning, I have school. My locker, Lizette's locker. Go figure, right? I meet her at the locker, and you could see that both of her eyes are like swollen from crying. So I guess she had just the same night that I did, which was horrible. For a 17-year-old kid to go through something like that. Talk about the trauma. And back then I was like, I didn't understand what trauma was, but it traumatized me. So did it traumatized her. And she's like, honey, what happened? I'm like, I don't know, Lizette. She's like, so we're really over? I'm like, I think so. I mean, this is my dad. Like, I don't defy my dad or my mom. I don't do it. Doesn't happen. So we went our separate ways. But that was junior year. I still had to get through a whole year of senior year with me and Lizette in the same school and some of the same classes. So, it was not easy. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of animosity. Her towards me, not me towards her. She was the victim at that point, but so was I. So I come to find out years later, you're never going to believe how this happened. My mom was talking to Lizette's mom earlier that evening, the 1-year anniversary evening, and she was asking, when Hani gets home, please don't let him stay too late. He has school tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. He's driving, he just got his permit, etc. And her and my mom are having a chat. Now, you have to remember, Lizette's mom has a thick accent. So as she was in conversation with my mother, she said, maybe someday they'll get married. So how that translated to my mother was this: Sunday they're getting married. Oh my God. Those words, someday they might get married. Those words in a heavy, thick Spanish accent, right? And an Egyptian woman listening with her kind of, the way she hears things, it's like Spanish, Egyptian, and then there's English and Spanglish and Ebanglish. I'll say that for Egyptian. How about that? We'll make it up as we go. Maybe somebody will use it later on down the line. Here's that. So my mother freaked out. She hung up with her and went to my dad and said, Hani's getting married on Sunday. Did he tell you? I guess my father said no. Remember, my dad's a hothead. If my mom is upset, he's upset. And he'll do whatever it takes for her not to be upset and not to nag him. I figured out it was more he didn't want to be nagged versus, he loves her and he cared and he didn't want her to be upset. No, I learned later that he does not like to be nagged. Not that he didn't love my mother. They loved each other dearly. 50 years of marriage. So, that's why. Someday they'll get married. Hani's getting married on Sunday. So that's why when my dad heard this, he picked up the phone, called the mother, and said, send my son right home. And I found out about this years later. What a sad story.